Hi everybody, it's Tanya Sherba with the product management team. Thanks for joining the Practitioners Forum meeting today. Brindusha Kevorkian and I are here to host today's call. We're both at a hotel where the Wi-Fi is very spotty, so hopefully fingers crossed that it stays on for the entire call today. So today we have a special session. We in the Practitioners Forum do a number of different kinds of calls. Sometimes it's just an office hours drop-in. Sometimes it's a technical drill down on a new feature. And then another style that we do is best practice sharing. And that's what we're doing today. We're going to do some SMAX implementation best practice sharing. And we'd like it to be, as much as possible, to be a discussion. And we've asked a couple of customers and partners to participate today as well to share with you some of their lessons learned. And then we have a few ourselves based on our experience of SMAX implementation. So feel free to chat in if you have questions or comments, and toward the end of the call we'll come off mute as well if time. Okay, so the best practice sessions, as I said, are about trying to share guidance and lessons learned and information on SMAX, and to help as a group for us to share information and get a common understanding of some of the principles and terminology. And sometimes the best practice sharing from the Microfocus team directly, and then as I said today, we've asked some customers and partners to help share their experiences with you to help you get the most of your suite. So today we'll look at the best practices for SMAX implementation, and we'll go into the audience the audience sharing here, and a few slides have been prepared in advance, and then again, if we have time, we can do some on the fly. I think I noticed Julian joining the call. Julian, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
I can, thank you. Thanks for joining. So I'll move the slides forward for you, but if you maybe just want to introduce yourself and we can get right into the materials that you've provided.
Yes, so I'm Julien Messet from the company Keraya. I'm currently working for Société Générale on SMAX and as a technical leader. So during the presentation, I will introduce some of the projects on which I have worked for the Société Générale. The first one is for SMAX, we had to import some data from your referential, like the contacts and some devices. Since we are not importing your data from USIMDB or from LDAP for the contacts, we had to use other means. To import contact, in fact, we do it using data import, so we had to automate the process, and we have used the web service to automatically push the data, the file which is produced every day by web services, in fact. Using that process is really useful because the data import manage automatically some things like the entity link field, which allow us to import information like the location of the contact of the manager without having to know the ID in the specific table. But we are limited by the number of reports we can import, which is 40K. And for devices, in fact, even if we use SIMDB2 in your company, we couldn't configure the out-of-the-box data push from USIMDB because some data are coming from an external source, another source. So we are using a connected scenario to do the operation. That connected scenario called the native SMAX web services to import the data. So one of the limitations of that is that the first version of the SMAX connector in SMAX in Connectit didn't manage entity links field, so we had to code a specific function to do that. But now it's managed since the latest version of the product. Can we go to the next slide, please? Hello?
Yep, should be seeing that now.
Yes. We have also created a new project in using the new functionality of SMAX, which is the studio, because we have the team who use product SMAX are not IT teams, so we had a requirement to implement a workflow to use HRIT issue in SMAX, so we have created a new dedicated workflow for that team on a specific tenant, so that team can deal their can create data, can create requests, sorry, with a workflow which is adapted to their needs. And we also use Connect IT for that need, because they want to automatically import tickets every month, because some errors are generated automatically, and it produces some CSV files that we import in SMAX using Connect IT scenario. So there was not a real difficulty. Sorry, there was no real difficulty to implement that, because implementing a new process in Studio is very simple, but I would say that the most difficult is to define the workflow with the client.
Okay. You need to define the workflow with requirements with your customer, you mean? With
yeah,
the HR?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, great. And ready for the next one?
Yes. One project on which I have worked too is a script to do an email integration, because we couldn't use out-of-the-box functionalities, because some things were not managed by the out-of-the-box that we need for your client, like the conversation ID of Exchange. In fact, that conversation ID allows to detect when a person answers on an email and see that the request is already created for that same topic. Like that, we don't need to create a new request every time that people share information on the same email. So it's something which is managed in out of the box by the button, but we couldn't use it because it was forbidden by the security here. Something else we have managed is to integrate encrypted emails, because we can users are sending some confidential data like credit cards numbers, and for that they use encrypted emails, emails which are encrypted using a certificate, and we couldn't manage integrate those emails using the out-of-the-box functionality. And we are also managing emails coming from users which are not known in SMAX, so without a contact record, which is not possible right now with out-of-the-box solution. So to implement that script, we are using a PowerShell script which connects to the mailbox using Edge Web Services, EWS, and we are also using all the most of the SMAX native web services to interact with the product, to create the request, to update it, to push the attachment from the email. So the most difficult part to implement the script was to develop all the functionality in PowerShell to call the web service, to get the SSO token, to get the existing request or the contact information, and create the request. By the way, I think it's possible. It's something I could share with the community. It's the function used in PowerShell to interact with SMAX, how to get the token, how to push the attachment, something like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for offering.
Yes, well, welcome. Okay, and next. So your project, in fact, is to have a single portal, because at Société Générale we use Service Manager and SMAX, and we would like to have a single portal to expose all the offerings of both tools to end users. Like, because we don't want end user to have a portal for Service Manager offerings and another one to request SMAX offerings. So for that, we think of using the case exchange functionality between SMAX and Service Manager. Like that, we will use SMAX portal to create all the offerings, and users will have access to that single portal. And after, if the offering is managed by the Service Manager team, the request will be copied, transferred in Service Manager. Like that, the end user has a single entry point to follow his request, to create request and see the status. The most difficult part with that project is because we have a lot of customization which are done in Service Manager on the request model. So we have to adapt the case exchange to manage those customization. And also, normally case exchange is more to exchange incident and request, but in Service Manager here we get interaction which are then escalated into requests or even start changes to have the link between SMAX and Service Manager. Okay. Yes, that's all. I don't know if maybe you have some question.
I did see one come in through the chat. It was, how did you deal with the unknown users?
Yes, in fact, to do it, we had two solutions. One is to have, because when we create the request, the first step is to check if there is a contact with the same email address which will exist in SMAX. The first solution is to have a standard contact if the person is not found, and to use it. And the second one is to create it by web service. And it's the one we have chosen. In fact, once the contact is not known in SMAX, we create it using the web services.
Okay, thank you. And Brindusha, I should have mentioned as well, as a technical success team, is that the solution that your team uses as well for unknown users? I think there's another approach as well, right?
Yeah.
And sorry, have we lost Brindusha again? We're going to need you to log into the audio again. So the next question, Julian, is did you define SM as external system in SMAX?
Yes, indeed, to use case exchange, we had to define SM as an external service system.
So those are some very... Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, by defining an same as an external using, we can use case exchange functionalities and retrieve the end of the request, using that case exchange web service to have to create a new request and share the update which are done in SMAX. In fact, we can create the request, we can update the request when she's updated in SMAX, when the end user add a comment, for example. It's like that we use case exchange in your project.
Right. Okay, great. Is there any other questions? Folks, you can come off mute as well if you like. So, Julian, and those are great examples of using Connected and Studio. It was great to see the Studio use in there as well. There were a couple of times where you said that you weren't able to use the out-of-the-box solution. One was the encrypted emails. On the UCMDB, is it that there were different sources? Was that the reason for needing to have
yes,
your own?
It's because some of your data are not in UCMDB yet. So we had to use another means to retrieve the data because they are not yet in UCMDB. I don't know if they will be soon. In fact, it's
Right.
not planned.
Okay, got it. Great, thank you.
Yes, because.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing. We'll watch the chat to see if there are other questions coming in. Thank you for that. We'll turn over to Chris from EOH. Chris, can you hear us? And can we hear you? Maybe Chris is having the same problem as Dusha.
And I'm back.
And you're back, great. And is Chris back? Okay, let's give him a moment to rejoin. And I think, is Ioannis, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I'm sure, but Ioannis from Performance Technologies, have you joined the call?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Can you introduce yourself and then we'll get into the practice you're sharing?
My name is Yannis or Ioannis. I'm an ITSM consultant for Performance Technologies here in Greece. Performance Technologies specializes in ITSM solutions for big organizations such as banks. Personally, I have participated in some projects, ITSM projects, and mostly for banks. Right now, we are working on a project for a major bank in Greece using SMAX. So what I wanted to share is something that is present in SMAX out of the box. It has a great functionality. And I just wanted to share my experience with you because I'm sure that many of my colleagues have a background in HPSM or MFSM. So there are some things that can be done in SMAX in a different way in order to make our lives more easy, let's say. We just have to move our mindset away from what we had for HPSM and change our mindset. So we have quite a big experience with HPSM, and we always had the ability to offer different services using different workflows. HPSM had the ability to build different workflows for different request models, and that gave us the advantage of having totally different rules and different phases, different statuses for different offerings. When we have different workflows, what does that mean? Actually, it means that we have a clear representation, a clear visual representations of the steps that need to be taken during the life cycle of a request. We also don't need to add too much conditional statements for the hundreds of request offerings models and the numerous user options. And we also can create simple workflows for simple requests that can be completed in a simple fashion. Starting this big project in the current project in this bank, we started doing customizations in the out-of-the-box workflow, the service request workflow. But very soon we realized that it had become very complex, not only to add functionality, additional functionality, but also to maintain it. You see, we were not even sure why we had added, after some time, why we had added some rules, or what impact would a change to a rule would have to other offerings. So soon we decided to redesign the request module by using as much of the task plan functionality as possible. Tasks are a great way to add business logic within your workflow. When we are in the fulfill phase, we can build a mini workflow. We can have a mini workflow embedded in there, which can be different for every offering. And if we have similar request offerings, we just create a fulfillment plan and we use it for every offering that has an identical, let's say, workflow. So in this way, we can have a specialized workflow, let's say, with all the benefits that this means. That's all. That's what I wanted to share with you. It's a great functionality. Tasks in SMAX are great. And that's our take on why we should use them.
Well, thank you for sharing. And in fact, that's one of the suggestions that is actually on Brandusha's list, I know. And I think especially for customers coming from Service Manager.
Yes.
Right, there was a tendency to overload the workflow, and so having this task plan, as you said, can make that much easier to manage. So I think that's great that you're pointing it out, that it's important for people to realize that capability is there. So thanks for sharing that.
Yes, thank you.
Great, and actually, sorry, Dan, before we go over to you, I believe that Chris is back. Chris, can we hear you now?
Can you hear me? Brandusha, can you hear me?
Oh no, he was back.
We can hear you, Chris. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Apologies, I'm from Africa, so our connection might be a bit bad. So my name is Chris Visaki. I'm an ITOM product manager for EMH, and we did a SMAX implementation, moving from Service Manager fairly recently, and I'm glad to share some of the stuff that we burnt ourselves on as part of this implementation.
You can hear him. Can you hear me though, Brandusha? Because I can't hear you.
Please.
Tonya, yeah, I can hear you. Yes, you're speaking over Chris.
I cannot hear him, so I'm going to pause, and you can text me, Brandusha, when Chris is done talking. That is very, very strange.
Okay, so I'll just continue.
Can anyone else confirm they can hear Chris?
Oh, somebody's just said they can't hear me now.
I can hear everyone except Tonya.
And Brent can hear Chris, but not me. What the heck? This is
thanks,
very
Tonya.
strange.
I'll start.
Apparently, only I can hear you, Tonya. I don't know. It's really odd. Anyway, Chris can speak.
Go ahead. Yeah, and I will read. Okay.
I'll text you when done.
Okay.
Right. So yes, we had a customer which was a Service Manager for quite an extensive time, and as part of this customer being on Service Manager for the amount of time they were on it, they went through various iterations of customization, as usually with Service Manager. And when they started looking at SMAX, we needed to look at how are we going to be able to fulfill the requirements as well as the activities and actions and processes that got currently on Service Manager without disrupting the environment. We went through a complete design stage and marketing stage and all these type of things to try and push the SMAX story and get excitement. But I actually recently in one of this presentations, the customer-facing decks, saw this one-liner that says adopt SMAX and don't adapt SMAX. So this is where we burned ourselves a bit because we didn't see this slide previously. So as part of the Service Manager system, as part of the migration, they had an application inside Service Manager which was custom development. And basically it was an application that ran on the side of change management which supported the change management environment. Sort of similar to scheduled maintenance, but quite a bit more robust, as well as enforcing much more controls and audits because of the type of scenario, government and regulations they needed to comply with. So what we did was initially with SMAX, we tried to, everyone spoke about Studio, so we tried to replicate this application into Studio, and this failed quite miserably. We couldn't get the application looking exactly the same as it was in Service Manager. There are good reasons for that. SMAX is not Service Manager, so typically that was maybe the wrong approach at the time, but we were a bit of on a crunch to try and resolve the issue. So as part of our attempts, we tried to get it going, and obviously these failed because you cannot do too much customization on SMAX like you do on Service Manager. And we went back to the drawing board, and as part of our drawing board engagement, we looked at what would be the best mechanism to take this application that was bespoke, get it onto SMAX, as well as enrich the environment. And we came up with a combination of using time periods as well as creating two change models which depend on each other, and then these actually drive the change process. The net effect of this after go live was that obviously, as most of you would know, people don't like change, so the first few days was quite painful because the change management environment and the community did not understand or really want to use the new way of work. But after a week or so, they actually started to move or shift their mindsets onto using this change models, and they actually extended it quite significantly, up to the fact that their change management environment passed an audit, as well as they are enriching the change management environment daily, and we are under a cycle of trying to look at how are we going to mature the change process and move it completely into an automated environment, which was fantastic for the customer. Now, another one which which was quite painful was the notion of master data. Now, because Service Manager can be customized quite significantly, this customer had 5 levels of customization. So we had category, subcategory, and all the way down to, we called it problem subtype. So it is quite a detailed classification tree. So this was one of the things which was a problem. Then on the configuration items, we had quite a lot of data as well, which was additional, and contact data, we had quite additional data, which made things quite interesting to migrate the master data to SMAX. So as part of this, we had to relook our data, because from a classification structure perspective, as we all know, on SMAX you've got the 3 levels. You can manipulate a little bit here and there, but you can't, as with Service Manager, bring in the total relationships up to the 5th level and even further. So we had to re-look at the way that the classification is done, and this forced us to also look at the way that SLAs are being managed at the customer site. This was quite useful at the time because the customer was undergoing a review, and we were looking at our self-service environment and how can we make use of our service catalogs as well as our services environment from a self-service perspective, utilize that better. So all of this forced us to relook the way that we did this, and at the end is we came up with a new classification structure as part of the customer, as well as our configuration items matured quite significantly due to this force. So if we got stuck on the idea or the notion of just migrating the data, we would have never really gotten or matured the environment or bettered the environment with SMAX, which we have done with this instance. Another painful one was our self-service environment. Some of the older guys, you would know on Service Manager, you've got RAD scripts and wizards and all these type of things, and you can really do quite a fair amount of customizations on the ESS portal, which we did at this customer. We had logos popping all over the show, and we had all sorts of very wonderful things happening in ESS. With SMAX, you don't have ESS. And Emil knows how painful this was for us, but we got over it and we started looking at how can we try and move these elements that we wrote as customizations and migrate this into a true catalog environment. It took quite some time for us to do this because of the offering and the way that you can build the workflow and the tasking, all of these nice things on the workflow. But we managed to do it, and we actually revitalized the self-service portal when we launched, which resulted in an uptake from our end user community of 35% additional tickets or more engagement coming from the service environment community than we had previously, which was quite exciting for the customer and resulted in the customer actually starting to focus more in their environment on the social aspect of the service portal and trying to enrich this environment quite more significantly. So Tonya, if you can jump to the next slide, please.
I pinned her to move to the next slide.
Thanks. So one of the big lessons we learned was, and I don't know if this is an African thing or maybe it's worldwide, but with Service Manager, the way a Service Manager in our experience runs is if you don't have a focused CSI program looking after Service Manager and constantly looking at trying to change process and mature process and do things differently, the environment can get a bit stagnated. And the customer becomes contented with what they have, and they actually don't want to change. They are happy with what they have, and they don't want to touch it. With SMAX, unfortunately and fortunately, it forces the customer to really look at the way that they have done things in the past and try and look at better ways to do things and not focus completely on the technical side of the system, but more on the process and the workflow driven side of the system, and try and make it and ensure that it makes more sense to their customer side. We have seen this when we with our latest implementation. The team that was involved was very nonchalant and did not engage when the project initiated. At the point in time where we are now, they are constantly bringing up new ideas, new demands coming in, and we are looking at all sorts of new and wonderful things that we can use from SMAX. Unfortunately, and fortunately from our perspective, it is heavily hinged on Studio, and we are building quite a bit of new applications that's coming from Studio, which is changing the way that environment is using the service management platform. One of the previous guys spoke about Connect IT. Yeah, this customer also had Connect IT, but we decided because it's a hosted environment, we want to look at OO, and unfortunately, OO is one of those things you should not ignore. OO is a powerful platform, a powerful technology, especially if you use it in conjunction with SMAX. We started using OO just to migrate master data, as well as manipulate master data as it's going across the wire. At the end of the day, about 60 to 70% of actions that happens inside SMAX is being done via OO. If you look at scheduling, so one of the things that SMAX at this point in time still does not have is the notion of scheduled maintenance, where you predetermine something and you can at a certain date something happens. So we use this from SMAX and OO, where we define the schedule in OO, and OO actually does the execution and creates a ticket or creates a change and actually completes the flow. So OO has become vitally important for us in this environment, and we are using it extensively, and we are seeing quite a lot of benefits coming from that environment from a stability perspective as well as from changing processes. That's my thoughts.
Next slide, Tonya, if there is anything.
No, that's
No? Okay,
that's mine.
good. Good. So I think we have one question in the chat. What did you force to move from SM to SMAX, and force in quotes?
So I think it's just the context thing. So the notion of the force to SMAX to move, it was not the forced move from SM to SMAX, but it was the more of a forcing of the way that we are looking at the way that things were done on Service Manager versus the way things are done on SMAX. We had to realign our thinking, as well as to realign the way that we engage with the customer, as well as how the customer engages with the system and utilizes the system. Because the same things that is available in Service Manager is not necessarily available in the same sort of fashion like in SMAX. As an example, we used in Service Manager, we had made quite extensive use of script libraries, and obviously script libraries is not available in SMAX. So we had to change that and actually start utilizing some elements from Studio quite more significantly to be able to fulfill some of the requirements from the customer side. That answer your question?
Hopefully. Karsten? Okay, good. Tonya, I think we're ready. Thank you very much. I think we're ready to move to Dan.
Hey, my name is Dan Kallenberger. I'm a solution architect with Greenlight Group. We're a partner here in the Americas. We work primarily, well, on the SMAX side, we work primarily in the cloud space, so we do offer SMAX as a service. We do work on-premise as well. However, currently there seems to be more interest in the SMAX as a service model. And I'm just going to share a couple of things that we've learned through a couple of different implementations. So if you want to go ahead on to the next slide.
Next slide, Tonya, please.
So first of all, when we deployed SMAX, initially back when it first came out, probably over a year ago, it was kind of a learning curve to get everything working as it should be, get the environment sizing right. One of the goals with working with SMAX as a service is to keep costs low, of course, and so we want to make sure that our environment is adequately sized, but not overly so. So one of the key things to do for us, and if you're looking to keep costs low but still have good performance, this is going to be key for you too, is doing load testing. So we use load runner scripts to test for scale and performance. Basically, in talking with our load testing engineer, some of the key things that we looked for when doing that load testing is to identify what our pain points were going to be for that application. So for us, just talking about it, we use SMAX for our own internal support as well. So for our specific system, the key pain points there are request management and live support. So those things need to be working for us to be able to open tickets and work tickets for customers. Now, depending on what organization you're a part of, other pain points may be change management, or other features in that tool. So you really want to look at those. What are the key things? If it breaks, what's going to cause the most pain? So build your load runner test cases around that, and then also from there get an understanding of how many users, what your average load is going to be. So are you going to have an average of 10 users logged in with 10 tickets an hour? So 100 total tickets every hour. That can be your baseline load to test from, and then from there you're going to increase. It depends on what your potential max load is, but you're going to increase several times to make sure that you can handle any load during peak hours. In that way, you understand what the limits are of the application, whether you need to add more worker nodes, more CPU, more memory, to really get an understanding of what the limits of your cluster, your SMAX cluster are. So the other key thing to keep in mind is to make sure that you get all of the groups involved during load testing. Talk to as many as you can, as many groups as you can that are going to be using SMAX to get their buy-in into load testing, to make sure that the things they care about are tested, and that way, if you have failed tests or successful tests, you already have the buy-in from them, from those groups, so you don't have to then go talk to them afterwards. Another thing that seems rather simple, but it's quite helpful, is friendly URL redirects. So rather than having, you can see down on my slide, the bottom URL there, it's rather long. That's kind of an out-of-the-box URL. It has that long tenant ID at the end. You can actually do DNS redirects so that it kind of gets rid of all that, so that shorter URL is much easier to remember, especially if you have dev and production environments or potentially multiple test environments. You can shorten those in your DNS entries to keep it so you don't have to remember tenant IDs. And that's just a nice thing to have. It just keeps it easy to remember, easy bookmarks. For those of you that are in your organization that are maybe non-IT, it's easier for them to remember than trying to remember, a specific tenant ID or something. Another key point is, once you're up and running, is to get some monitors running on your cluster. So some of the key things to monitor are memory load, CPU load, and then pod memory consumption. So if we're talking about CPU load, for example, that's if you do a top on a Linux box, the CPU load there is what we're monitoring. And really that's just to get an understanding of how heavily the box the server is being used by SMAX, and then you can set your thresholds based on the number of CPU cores you have. So for us, for example, we have 4 CPUs on one of our masters for a customer, and so we set our critical CPU threshold on that monitor to, I believe, 8, so double the number of cores. There's other, minor and major warnings before that, but that's our critical threshold. And then for pod memory consumption as a percentage of pod memory limit, that's really key. There can be some crashing that can occur on certain pods if they start consuming too much memory. Weird things can happen in the cluster. So that's something very important to monitor, is how much memory your pods are using. A couple of notes on that. In earlier versions, the pod memory usage was very sporadic. They would spike randomly and then come down. In the latest versions, that has been improved greatly, so the memory usage isn't quite so erratic. It's much more stable. The RabbitMQ pods are also a lot more reliable now. So if you haven't updated to the latest version, I would definitely recommend doing that. One thing that we did, we have a customer that isn't quite ready for the upgrade to the latest version. However, we were able to take some of the configuration files from the new version for the pods and upload them onto the older version. So that improved some of the stability in the pods even without upgrading to the latest version. So there's still things you can do, features from the latest version that you can utilize even if you're not quite ready for that upgrade, to help with some of those erratic memory consumption issues. Prior, in the old versions, we would have to often restart pods and shuffle pods around from worker node to worker node to avoid having any issues. RabbitMQ is one that we often had to restart just because the memory consumption would climb too high, and then we would have to restart it. But that seems to be fixed in the newer version. Another key piece of monitoring is, which I don't have on the slide, but that you may want to look into, is APM and BPM monitoring. So transactional monitoring, a couple things we monitor are, can we open a ticket in the self-service portal? Basically, you want to just, similar to load testing, you want to just continue to monitor things that are important to you. So if you use self-service portal a lot, you may want to have a transaction monitor around opening a ticket in the self-service portal. If you use incident management, you may just want to open an incident management. We also have a back office transaction that runs to make sure that the back office is up and stable. One issue that we had run into, and I don't recall if we've actually solved it yet or if it's fixed in the latest version, but some of you may have run into this where outbound email stops working and you have to restart a pod in order to kick it off again. Essentially what happens is the queue gets backed up, and the email queue gets backed up, and then all the emails are still there, they just don't get sent until you restart that pod, and then they all come out again. So that's one thing that we try to monitor, is make sure that outbound email is continuing to work. And honestly, that's something that we try to do in most applications, just because we've run into that problem in other applications as well, where email stops working for some reason, and then maybe it's difficult to monitor without just sending an email to confirm that email was received. Last piece that's very closely related to monitoring is anomaly detection. We use OBA, Ops Bridge Analytics, for anomaly detection. And one thing that I was told by our monitoring team to look out for is to make sure that you start monitoring as early as possible in collecting these metrics, so that OBA can get a really good baseline, because that's what it uses for its anomaly detection. Is it gathers a baseline for what's your normal CPU usage, what's your normal memory consumption, and then if there's things outside of that baseline, it marks it as an anomaly for you to go investigate. With that said, if you have an anomaly that occurs and then continues to occur, that will eventually get adjusted into the baseline, so it won't be detected as an anomaly anymore. So it's probably something you want to keep an eye on and not just ignore, because again, if it continues to occur, and I don't know what the specific threshold is, how many times it will occur, but it will eventually just get baselined in, and it will no longer be an anomaly.
Okay, so then before you move to the next slide, we have a few questions, and one of them is, any feedback on the load testing? What's the bottleneck in your experience? What's the driver for performance degradation? Number of concurrent users, size of the database, complexity of the workflow, anything else?
So bottlenecks for load testing, I tend to be more around just the size of your cluster. I have not noticed any issues with the size of the database yet. I'm sure there's a bottleneck there at some point with how many cores and memory, how much cores and memory you have on the database, but for our cluster specifically, our databases seem to be sized appropriately, and it's just a matter of how many worker nodes you need to have out there. I think one of our clusters got tested up to, I want to say it was either 200 or 500 concurrent users, which is quite a bit more than ever get used on that system. Complexity of workflows, I would not say that we have a customer right now with extremely complex workflows, so I can't speak to that currently. I think that with SMAX, it's really a disadvantage in the application if you do have an extremely complex workflow. That's obviously has a giant asterisk by it, because you may need a complex workflow in certain cases. But I think overall that there's definitely advantages in SMAX with using simpler workflows. I've worked with customers before that do have more complex workflows, and transitioning to SMAX, we're able to get their workflows to work and they're fine without having so much complexity. When you add a lot of complexity, it adds a lot more administrative overhead to the application, and so I think just in ITSM tools in general, you can accomplish a lot without getting super complex in the workflows. What version are we running? We're running a couple different versions, depends on the customer. One of them is on the latest version, November release. We have one on 2018 08, and then another one on 2018 I want to say it's the April release. One of our customers does have SSO enabled. We have had issues with SSO connection issues. A lot of it seems to be around caching in the browser. So we'll even notice that on our internal system without SSO enabled. Or I guess we do have SSO. We have LDAP authentication enabled at least. Where somebody will try to log in and it'll get a 500 server error, but everybody else can log in fine. And what happens is if you clear your browser cache, that person can then log in fine. We haven't necessarily figured a way around that other than just clearing your browser cache. But there are some, I don't know if that's the issues you're experiencing, but that's definitely the one that we notice the most. RabbitMQ issues, yeah, those, I don't know, what version are you on, Chris? Are you still having RabbitMQ issues, or have you fixed that?
Yeah, we got a hot patch from support for RabbitMQ, but we're running on the 08 version.
Yeah.
So it's a bit better after the patch, but before the patch it was painful.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we implemented that patch also back in the 08 version. But yeah, there was definitely some RabbitMQ issues. So if you guys are not on the newer versions of SMAX yet, I would definitely recommend upgrading or at least getting that patch from support to help with RabbitMQ issues. Yeah,
no, we do have the patch. We were planning to do the upgrade in December, but then after our painful exercises with RabbitMQ, we decided we would like a nice Christmas break.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. Any other questions?
I don't see other questions. Tonya, could you please move to the next slide? Okay. Good. So I guess it's my turn, and we have a few minutes. And I want to thank very much the speakers, and I'm glad to see the best practices mentioned, which align with some of the points I have in my slide. So I would say, just want to mention a few points, and some of them are really the project approach and how you start with SMAX and how you work with SMAX. And what's really important is to stay informed, attend the practitioner forum, the release readiness, read the release notes, ITOM Summit or the Micro Focus Universe in Europe, and use as much as possible the existing communication and collaboration channels like the community or open support tickets as needed. As was mentioned by quite a few of the speakers, right? Ready your team for the change in mindset, and the fact that SMAX has a different product philosophy. As we are introducing more features, you have to find the right balance between waiting for the out-of-the-box capabilities to come, or now with the studio, you have the flexibility to build your own applications. And follow as much as possible the out-of-the-box processes. Here it's really about adopting and not adapting, right? You don't want to replicate what you had before. I know Chris mentioned it, and Yannis mentioned it, right? Don't try to replicate what you had in Service Manager or in your previous tool, because that's not gonna allow you to take advantage of the capabilities that exist, the fit for purpose capabilities like live support, like CI detection, change analytics, and so many more that exist in the product. And where, as much as you can, work iteratively and share the success early with your consumers, making sure they are aware of what you're implementing, and you can get the feedback and incorporate it in your implementation. Next slide, Tonya. Okay. For the implementation, take time to design. As Julian said as well, it's quick, it's very easy, and it's quick to implement, like a studio application, for example, on write a few business rules. What takes time is really to design it and make sure you have the right fields, the right business rules before you implement it. And if you try something new, what you can do is always, set up a playground where you can test, a throwaway system. And once you feel comfortable, then you move to your official development tenant. Do not overload or repurpose out-of-the-box fields. If you create custom fields, always keep in mind, if you're working in a multilingual environment, keep in mind to update the labels for all these fields, so users working in various languages can take advantage of them. For the workflow, consider as much as possible using offerings and models. That's where the specificity of each use case should go. Rather than overloading the main workflow with many if conditions and rules, which then will slow down and impact the performance of your system. And if you have business rules or transitions with specific paths, make sure you always close those flows, so you don't have situations where a record randomly goes in a specific direction because there is no clear indication. And if you have issues, take advantage of the workflow debugger capabilities from the UI. In many cases, I was able to, when I run into a problem, I found it very helpful. Next slide, Tonya. Okay, for the notifications, if you're not careful, you can always end up with a storm of emails. You will overload your system and your SMTP server number of emails it can send out. So make sure you have your recipients targeted as much as possible. If you have agent users, business users who like to work in queues rather than receiving emails, you can always consider adjusting your notifications, and just add enough in the notification for the users then to be able to follow the hyperlink into the ticket as needed. As you promote your changes from development to production, be familiar with what is part of the dev process, what gets moved versus what should be considered as part of your transactional data or referential data, and needs to be loaded in each of the tenants. And I think one more slide. We have just a few tips and examples, and I think I just have 2 in there. Do not try to stay away from hard coding where you use IDs like in a business rule. IDs are not portable, so when you transfer a workflow from development to production, these IDs can be different. So as much as possible, reference a record by display label or by a lookup function like the group ID by UPN for the groups. And for service offerings, They cannot be moved between a development and production system for the moment. So consider creating your catalog, your offerings in development only for a bit of testing and experimentation, but then the overall content of your catalog in production, and as you develop it, you can restrict the access to just the implementation team using the audiences, but then once it's ready to publish, then adjust those audiences. And this is just a few tips. There's obviously a lot more, and we can always collect them and have them presented in future sessions. Tonya, next slide, please. So I'll hand it over to you. Hopefully we can hear you. Tonya?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. If anybody has any clue as to why I can hear Brindusha but nobody else, feel free to enlighten us. But I'm sure they were fantastic presentations. Thanks again to the presenters. Just a quick note on our upcoming sessions. So the next one in 2 weeks, we'll just do office hours. Oh, Brindusha, Kate is saying she can't hear us. So actually, I think maybe the slide speaks for itself. We could probably.
Okay. Okay, so let me wrap up then on my side, right? So yes, so we have the next few sessions listed on the slide. Office hours in 2 weeks. Drop in if you have questions. We'll be there to answer. We're still trying to decide on a topic for February 13th, and then on February 27th we plan to have the release readiness presentation for the 2019-02 release. But stay tuned and, periodically go check the post on the community as we are updating the information as we go. If anything changes, you will have the latest information in there. Okay. Anything else, Tonya, you have?
No, thank you.
No. Okay. Okay.